All right. Well, welcome everybody to our program tonight, Kwanzaa Time. Thank you for coming out and joining us. I just have a couple of quick housekeeping things to go over before we get started. Tonight's program is a hybrid program, so it is being recorded online and is being shown here in person. The recording of our event will be posted on YouTube probably next week, so you'll be able to see it then if you miss it tonight or if you want to see it another time. Also, I'll mention, let's go with Q&A. We'll have Q&A time at the end of the program tonight. So save up your questions and you can ask them. We'll have some time after Velma is done. For those of you who are attending online virtually, you can put your questions in the chat. I'll keep track of them and I'll go ahead and ask them at the end of the program as well. So feel free to put those in the chat at any point. I'll keep track of them. All right, well, tonight we are celebrating the holidays and learning a little more about what they mean for us in our community. We are joined by Velma Gladney. She is an early childhood educator with a master's in education. She has used her storytelling gifts to help young people develop strong imaginations, self-esteem, character, and an appreciation for the written word. Velma has told stories all across Chicagoland area, including dramatic representations of historical African women, such as Bessie Coleman. She tells stories of the Underground Railroad, tales from around the world, including different cultures, and even ghost stories. But tonight, Velma is talking about Kwanzaa, and she's going to explore the meaning of those 7 principles and give you a little bit more information that you might not know about and the meaning of all of this. We have a nice display here that she'll talk about as well. Hopefully her stories and her talk will spark a little imagination in yourselves as we celebrate a part of African-American culture. So please welcome Velma Gladney.
Well, it's Kwanzaa time. It's Kwanzaa time at the Glenview Public Library. First, I'll give you a little introduction and tell you some facts about how Kwanzaa got started. It's a relatively recent African-American celebration based on African traditions and customs. The idea was conceived by Dr. Merlando Coringo in 1966. He thought this would be a way of bringing some joy and some pride into the African American community, as there was a lot of discomfort and a lot of problems. So he came up with some ideas of what we could do to celebrate and embrace our culture, especially our African traditions. Now, this is based on the harvest festivals that they celebrated in Africa. It has nothing to do with religion at all, but they had those at the end of the harvest time, they had celebrations where they celebrated. And what he did, he came up with 7 principles and 7 symbols. And those principles are in Kiswahili, in a language called Swahili, which is spoken in about 50 cultures among about 50 million people in East Africa. So the principles are in Swahili. And our first principle is unity. And we call that umoja. And the black candle represents emoji. This would be, and this holiday is celebrated the day after Christmas through the 1st. And what happens is, we're just going to give you a little touch on how they do it. The first day, the black candle is lit. That's umoja, which means unity. The second day, we go to Kuji Chakalia, which means self-determination. And from self-determination, the next one would be a green candle, Ujima. and Ujima represents cooperative responsibility, work responsibility. Then we go back to a red candle, and that would be Ujima, cooperative economics. And then we go to the next candle, which would be Nia, which represents purpose, that we all need to have a real purpose in life. Then the next one would be Kuamba, creativity, hoping that we will leave this land in a better shape than we found it. And the last one is Imani. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is share a story for these principles. I don't think I can tell a story for each one in this length of time. And then we have some other symbols that go on the table. This is the manzua. This is the harvest crop. And we have the mikeka. This is the straw mat, which is the foundation. And then we have a candle holder called the canara. And then we call all these candles Mishoma Shaba. That's the 7 candles. And this is the unity cup. Ki Kumba Cha Umocha. Now on this table we have gifts for the children. These are the gifts. Now this table is set up and one candle would be lit each night to represent. Then we have the books here. These would be the zawadi, the gifts for the children. And you'll have other gifts for the children. And the ears of corn, we call them the muhendi. They represent the children. And the children that's here and the children that's on their way. Now, these are all the symbols, and what happens, you celebrate each day, each one principle each day, and then in the final analysis, they have a big celebration, the big food associated with it. And at the beginning of these celebrations, we always do something that they call the pouring of libations. And with the libations, we pour water into the plant. And that represents our ancestors. We pay homage to our ancestors, those people who were lost and buried in the Atlantic that never made it to this land. So we pour libations, and you say, Ashe. We pour libations for our grandmothers and our grandfathers, and we honor and respect them. We pour libations for those children who are on their way, those unborn children. And we pour libations for the Spirit of God that is within me. Ashe. We pour libations for our Creator. And we say, Ashe. Now, as a storyteller, what I do is tell stories to match each principle. And since we said the first principle would be unity, and we call that umocha. And I'm going to tell you a story that I like to tell, and one is an African folk tale called Anasi and His 6 Sons. Now, sometimes Anasi is a man, and sometimes he's a spider. But in this story, he's a man. Now, as Nasi has gone to town and to the marketplace, and he did his shopping and was on his way home. And as he was walking along and not paying attention, he slipped and fell into the river. And when he fell into the river, but before falling in the river, along the way, he found a beautiful shining light. And he had that big shining light on his arm when he messed up and slipped and fell into the water. And when he fell into the river, a great big fish scooped him up, swallowed him. And he's in the belly of that fish, swishing around. And back home, his wife also is thinking, where is father? And the 6 sons are thinking, well, we wonder what has happened to father. It has gotten very late. He's not home yet. But he's in the belly of that fish. Now, when each one of these boys was born, each one had a very, very special name. The first son was Sea Trouble. He could see trouble at a distance. The next son was called Road Builder, and Road Builder could build. And the next son, River Drinker. He could drink large amounts of water. And then there was Game Skinner. And there was also Rock Thrower, and also Cushion. Now, each son had a role to play in retrieving father. Oh, they kept around home, and they kept wondering where is father? What has happened? And Sea Trouble walked up, and he had the ability to see trouble at a distance. And he said, I see father. I see him. He's in the belly of a great big fish. But how in the world can we get to him? Because that river is far, far away. And it was at that time, Road Builder came up and he took over and he began to weave that road. And he went in and out and in and out. And they all got down to the river. And now what are they going to do? But River Drinker said, I have the ability to drink up all of the water. And he drank all of that water, and that was that great big old fish. And Game Skinner stepped up to the plate and said, oh, I know what to do. And he cut him open, and out came a Nasi. He was out again, and they were walking down the road, talking about who would get that glowing light, because Nasi had said, whoever rescued me will get the light. And just then a great big falcon bird scooped down and took a Nasi up, higher and higher. And he knew, but that was old Rock Roar. A Rock Roar came through, and he threw that rock. And Nasi began to fall. But that other last boy's name was Cushion. And he spread his step on the ground, and Nasi fell down. And if it had not been for Cushion, he would have broken all the bones in his body. But he fell down, and now he's thinking, who in the world will I give that light to? Because if it had not been for Sea Trouble, nobody could have found me. If it had not been for Road Builder, nobody could have gotten to me. If it had not been for River Drinker, Nobody could, they couldn't get me. And Game Skinner played an important role, and Rock Thrower played an important role, and Cushion Hart played an important role. But guess what? He said, I know I'm going to see the sky god, Naomi. We'll go and see Naomi and I'll talk to him. And here's what he said to him. Since all the boys were able to help you, let's put that shining light up into the sky and you'll be able, and they'll all be able to enjoy it. And if you go outside and look up at the sky at night, you'll see the moon, and it's there for all to enjoy. Now that's a unity story. It was a cooperation of all the boys that brought Father back to life. Anasi and his 6 sons. Now I like to tell a story, and you may be familiar with this story. The story of a little lady named the Rosa Parks, the woman of courage, a woman who sat down and was determined to fight for her rights. It was December 1st, 1955, that Rosa was on her way from work. She worked in a place where she had been sewing and her shoulders was tired. She was in a little city called Montgomery, Alabama. And Rosa said, I'll take the bus home. I'll ride the bus. And she got on that bus and she sat at the time at the first seat behind the white section. Because at that time in our history, Black folks knew not to sit in the front of a bus. At the time I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, and I knew to always go to the back. But that day Rosa said, oh no. She sat there and the bus was rolling along, chugging along, and it filled up, and eventually a white man got on that bus and there was no seat for him in the white section. So the bus driver came back and he said, lady, you're gonna have to move. She said, not today. And he looked at her. And he said, lady, if you don't move, I'm gonna get the police and have you arrested. So she sat there and the bus got real quiet and everybody was just listening. Bus driver walked off of that bus. He came back on and he had 2 policemen. They ushered Rosa off, carried her to jail. One fingerprinted her. The other one had a camera in front of her face. They locked her up in that dark cell for 2.5 hours. She sat there. She was a woman of faith. She didn't cry. She just sat there and she prayed. Somebody on that bus who saw what had happened called the president of the NAACP, called her husband, and they came and bailed her out after sitting in jail for 2.5 hours. She went home and her lawyer came, Mr. Gray, and the president of the NAACP, and they talked about what had happened to her and how she had been mistreated. But they said, well, tomorrow we'll have a meeting. So they had a meeting and they had the leaders of the town of Montgomery to meet. And Dr. Martin Luther King was one of those leaders. And they said, if the bus company don't treat us fair down here, we won't ride the buses. We will not ride the buses. So they decided they would have a meeting. And while they were there and all these people, they began to write those little notes that said, we won't ride the bus to work. We won't ride the bus to school. We won't ride the buses anywhere. We are going to walk until the bus company began to treat us right. So Sister Rosa went on to court. They fined her. And that's when they said, well, we are going to organize. We are going to walk until we can get this all straightened out. And you know, Rosa went to work the next day after that happened. Boss treated her kind of chilly. The people that was working there looked at her kind of strange. But you know what? She just went on about her business. And they put the word out. And on that Sunday morning, Black preachers all across Montgomery preached from their pulpits, telling about what had happened to Rosa Parks, and said, we're not going to let this happen. And on Monday morning, when the buses rolled, they were empty. The people was walking and a cheering because they knew that they had won. They had the big mass meeting. First, they let Rosa talk. Then they had prayer. Dr. King spoke and said, we have been mistreated long enough. We're going to walk. We are going to walk. And at that time, they organized the Montgomery Improvement Association. And Dr. King was made president of that association. The people in Montgomery walked. They walked. They walked. They walked to town and they walked from town and they walked to school and they were known as the walking city. Down in Montgomery, the year 1955, they walked all winter, they walked all summer, and they walked all fall. And it was in the fall that the Supreme Court decided that they would break down those barriers and people who paid their fares would be able to sit anywhere. But it was a little lady called Rosa Parks who used a lot of self-determination to get what she wanted. And that's what we are trying to say. We as a group of people need to develop that self-determination in order to get our rights. Nobody give them to us. And the barriers were broken down where we could sit anywhere. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and it was at that time we became eligible to sit anywhere on the public transportation. That's Coogee Chocolier, self-determination. Now, these were the things that the man who created this came up with. And then we go to, the next would be UGMA, cooperative work on responsibility. Now, this is a folk tale, and it's Rabbit at the Water Hole. Now, I don't know if you know that little old folk tale about Rabbit at the Water Hole, but we go to Kenya and East Africa. I'm a tall mango tree. Shay, 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 shay. Now let me see you, hear you say that. I'm a tall mango tree. Shay, 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 shay. I am the sun. Ha, ha, ha. I am the sun. Ha, ha, ha. I am the river. I am the river. Flowing, 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 flowing. I am the mountain high. I am the mountain high. I am the stars. I am the stars. Twinkle, 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 twinkle. I am the storyteller, ready to begin. Now, long time ago, something very strange happened. All the creeks and all the ditches dried up. There was no water any place. And oh, monkey beat his drum. Bum, bum, bum. Bam, bam, bam. What are we going to do? Bam, bam, bam. The elephant came out and he said, Trump, Trump, Trump. And the lion said, what are we going to do? And the animals all began to cry. Woo! They cried and they moaned and they crooned. There was no water anywhere. And finally, the little old chipmunk said, I know what we can do. Let's dig. Let's dig. And they all started digging for that water. Hee-ho, dig, 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 dig. Hee-ho. Finally, they said, here's some water. Here's the water. Oh, they were so happy. So they said, well, did everybody dig? But it was one animal didn't dig. That was Sun-Gurry the rabbit. He did not dig. He did not cooperate. He did not take responsibility and work. So they say, what are we going to do about him? What are we going to do? So, well, all right, you all wash your faces, drink some water, but we're gonna get Sun-Gurry the rabbit. He didn't work. No work, no water. So they all got the water and they took them some nice cool drinks and they washed their faces and oh, they was having a good time. And they decided they would go home, but they needed to have somebody to watch the water hole to make sure old Sun-Gurry didn't come and drink. So Buffalo said, I'll watch. So big Buffalo was there. Now, what kind of sound does Buffalo make? Moo, 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 moo. And he was sitting there. And they said, now you make sure that little rabbit don't get in the water. And after everybody had gone home, he came and Sun-Gurry gave him some honey to eat. And while he was eating that honey, while the buffalo was eating that honey, the rabbit went over there and started drinking water. So when the animals came out and said, did he get some water? Yes, because he wasn't paying attention. He was tricked. So we got to get rid of him. Then they said, okay, we'll get Hyena. And Hyena laughs, he. So Hyena came and he made a nice jacket. And he was sitting there all wrapped up in his jacket. And Sun-Gurry helped him make that jacket, helped him get all wrapped up. And while he was sitting there all comfortable, Sun-Gurry went and he got some water. So when the folks came back, they said, did he get some water? Yes, he did. Well, I know what we'll do. We'll fix him. Who can keep him away? Well, here comes Turtle through. And when Turtle came through, he reached up and he got some sap and he put that on his back. And you know, Turtle has a big hard shell and he can put his head in the shell. So when that little rabbit came, he said, that's a shiny rock. And he went over there and he touched that rock and his hand stuck. And he touched the other, his hand stuck on there. And he couldn't get away. They got him. They got him because he got stuck on the turtle. He couldn't get away. Yes, no work, no water. No work, no water. And that's how it is in life. We have to work and we have to use a little Ujima to work. And then we have the feast. Now the feast is cooperative economics. There once was a king, a chief, who was going to have a great big old celebration. And here's what he told the folks. I'm going to provide all the food. I'm going to provide all the entertainment. And all you all have to do is bring a gourd full of fine wine. All right, everybody was excited. They was excited about the big festival that was going to go on. They were very excited about the festival and all the fine food. But one old stingy man said, we don't have to take no fine wine to that feast. Let's fill our gourd up with water. Now, what the king has said, when we get all this fine wine, we're going to dump it in one container, and we'll all drink from that one container. Well, that old stingy man wasn't the only one decided that he was going to fill his gourd up with water. All the folks fill their containers up with water. And then they all dumped them in the big container. There was no wine. And when the king took his sip, he said, this is water. This is nothing but water. He got mad and said, we're going to shut the festival down. Go home. This is no way to behave. And that's what happened to those folks. So you have to cooperate. Cooperative economics. And we have Kuumba creativity. And that is, Mr. Karingo is saying that we need to leave this world in a better way than we found it. Make a contribution. And we like to think about those poets and writers and painters that did so much. Like Miss Brooks. And I love her so much. She did so much in the community for the young people. And she left some marvelous poetry here for us. And one little point that I like to say is called Tommy. I put a seed into the ground and said I'll watch it grow. I watered it and cared for it as well as I could know. One day I walked in my backyard and oh, what did I see? My seed had popped itself right up without consulting me. Then we like to think of those African American poets like Langston Hughes, who left so many wonderful works. And one poem I love to say so much, and I understand Dr. King's speech Dreams was kind of based on that. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, because if dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. And also one of his other famous poems was Rivers. Are you familiar with rivers? I've known rivers, ancient dusty rivers. I've known rivers, ancient as the blood that flows in human veins. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo. I've known rivers, ancient, dusty rivers. My soul grows deep in rivers. Now, Kuumba, that's creativity. And the last candle, see, what you do is you celebrate one of these principles each day, and then we'll cover all of them. And the last one is Imani, and that's faith. And we all have to have, and I'm going to tell you a story that I like to tell called The People Who Could Fly. Are you familiar with that story? About those people who use their imaginations to set themselves free. They say that people from Africa could fly. They could walk up on a gate. They could climb up on a gate. They flew like blackbirds, flapping their shiny wings up against the heavenly blue. But many of those people was captured into slavery. They had no place on those old slave ships to keep those wings. They had to get rid of them. But the ones who could fly kept those powers in the land of slavery. One such old man, called him Toby. Standing tall and yet afraid was a young woman who could fly. Called her Sarah. And then there was old master. He was a hard lump of clay, a gritty rock pile that could not be moved. And that was the overseer. He watched those that slowed down. And then there was that old driver. He was he was tough. Set a child on Sarah, and then that was Sarah. She had a babe on her back. Set a child on Sarah's back, began to cry. She didn't know what to do. She just sat down at the end of the road. And that old driver came, and he cracked that whip, and old Toby came, and he said, daughter, you must go as you know how. And he raised his hands, and he began to say those magic words. Cooley-bar, cooley-bar, cooley-bar. And Sarah lifted one foot, and she lifted that other foot, and she just began to roll over in the air, and she began to fly over the treetops and the houses and the mountains, and she flew on out of sight. The ones who were there saw that it was. The next day, a young man fell from the heat. Old Toby came, and he said those magic words. Cooley-bar, that young man rose up. And then another one and another and another. They began to fly like blackbirds or black crows. It really didn't matter. They flew. They flew. Old master come running. He said, who said those magic words? Oh, Toby threw his head back and he said, don't you know who we are? We are the ones who can fly. And with the words of an ancient dark past, Cooley-bar, Cooley-bar, they all join in hands. Cooley-bar, Cooley-bar. They joined hands and they began to fly. And they flew to freedom. They flew to freedom. And the ones who could not fly, they sat close by the fire. And they wanted to tell old Toby, but old Toby didn't have time to teach them to run. They would have to, he didn't have time to teach them to fly. They would have to wait for a chance to run. But the ones who could not fly, they sat close. They sat close by the fire and they told it. And tonight I have told you about the people who could fly. Thank you so very much. Now, that ends my stories for tonight. Umoja, Kuji Chakalia, Ujima, Ujama, Nia, Kuumba, Imani. And since I have you all here, and maybe you would like to do this with me, I got the spirit. I got the spirit. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa. I got the spirit. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa in my hands. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa in my hands. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa in my head. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa in my shoulders. I got the spirit of Kwanzaa in my shoulders. I got it, I got it, I got it. Hey, hey, I got the spirit. I got the spirit, Umoja. I got the spirit of Umoja. I got the spirit, Kuji Chakalia. Kuji Chakalia. Ujima. I got the spirit, Ujima. I got the spirit, Ujama. I got the spirit, Nia. Nia. I got the spirit, Kuumba. Kuumba. I got the spirit. I got the spirit, Imani. Now, would y'all like to ask me a question about my presentation?
I wanted to know if the colors of the candles had any significance with the different.
What's the question?
The colors of the candles, do they have any significance?
Yeah, the red represents the blood that we shed. The black represent the people, and the green represent, oh gosh, the green represent the land. Now the colors for this is red and green. And what we say, the black, the people, the red, the blood, and the green, the line. And as we said, this was created by a professor named Dr. Karengo, who was a professor at California State University back in 1965. Well, thank you so much. Any other questions?
Just what kinds of fruits?
Well, this is the harvest. See, they had these harvest festivals in Africa, and the people celebrated. So what he was trying to do was come up with some things that were very symbolic to the African culture, and how the African people, the ones who of us who are here, to relate to what was going on in Africa, because they didn't have Christmas and all these Thanksgivings and things we celebrate. So he studied those customs and things that went on over there, and that was what he based the program on. And the children would get books for Christmas, not Christmas, but for the holiday. And this runs from the 26th through the 1st. And each day you would have a celebration. And one candle, one principle you would discuss and go into.
Did you burn a candle every, so like the first night you burn?
Yeah, the first night you would light the black one, and then the red one, and then the green one, and then back and forth for the celebration. So how happened you all to come to this program tonight?
Curiosity, interest.
Well, I hope you,
Different cultures. Traditions.
well, I hope you'll be able to go further into learning about what these things stand for. Now, I have that Kwanzaa book that was written by, this book was written by Linda and Clay Goss. And they have a big celebration up in Philadelphia every year, one of the largest ones. And I used to attend somewhere around the Chicagoland area. They used to have a big one at Kennedy King College. And then there was a big one at Malcolm X in Chicago. So that's the story of Kwanzaa. Yes.
I have a question online. They asked, do you recite anything when you're lighting the candles?
Do I recite?
When you're lighting the candles, do you say words? Do you recite something?
Well, you talk about the candle. Say, we didn't light the candles here tonight, but the first night you'll deal with the black candle, and that would be unity. So you'll talk about unity. And that's when you would tell your unity stories and present. But we just gave an overview of all of the whole program of what go on in 6 days, but we couldn't do all that here tonight. So we kind of just hit on one story per. And sometimes families have these celebrations in their homes, and they light one candle each night. Do you have another question for me?
I have one. So is storytelling a key part of each night? Is that like one of the main
They
things?
dance, they eat. Since I'm a storyteller, I present my program through storytelling, but they'll tell you that they dance and they, do different festival activities. And food is a real big part of the celebration. As most celebrations, we have food because this is a harvest celebration.
The kids get a present each night.
Huh?
The kids get a present with the theme for each night.
Yes, I think they do get presents. You have the presents on the table. Yeah, they get homemade gifts. They kind of try to stay away from all that commercial stuff, they get homemade gifts, and they get books. And we just had a couple of books displayed here. Are there more questions? Well, we want your lights to shine, and we're going to sing This Little Light of Mine. I'm going to let it shine. And as Velma, storyteller Velma will try to let her light so shine as she work in the community and as she go. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine and let it shine everywhere I go. He's going to put it up here for us to sing.
Sounds not working.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. This little light. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Umoja. Ujima. Ujama. Imali.
Imali.
Now, all of these are called the Nugo Shaba. Umoja means unity. Kuji Chakalir means self-determination. Ujima means collective work and responsibility. Ujema, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kuumba, creativity. Imani means faith. Thank you so very much for coming out tonight and listening, and hope you will learn more about Kwanzaa as you go along. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And thank you guys so much for coming as well and joining us tonight. I also hope I learned a lot. Those stories were amazing. Fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so glad you were able to come out tonight. If you have any comments, we do have comment forms in the back if you want to leave anything for us to say, but otherwise, thank you so much for coming.